ส่งนะ
Morning. Gather here on this morning, both in person and those of you who are joining us streaming as well. We remember and honor the life of Vivian Bratton. We grieve her loss and to celebrate her gifts that she so generously shared with us. We come here too to extend our love and our comfort to her family. In time of loss and of grief, we turn to words of wisdom spoken over the years in our tradition, new and old, to speak of comfort in time of loss and of love enduring through memory. In the book of Ecclesiastes, there's a time for everything. Time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot that which is planted. A time to destroy and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to cry and a time to dance. A time for throwing stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to discard. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time for silence, a time for speech. Time for love, time for hate, time for war, time for peace. Psalm 121. Esai el harim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri ve'im Adonai, posei shamayim va'aretz, ayitein lamod ra'ylecha, ayanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum ve'lo yishan, shomer Yisrael. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Holy One, maker of heaven and earth, who will not let your foot give way, who will not slumber. The Holy One, the source of all life, is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. The Holy One will guard you from all time, from all harm, will guard your life, your coming and your going, now and forever. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools, this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me. Your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. It is a human thing, love, a holy thing, love that death is touched. from the young Israeli poet Senesh. ישכוח חברים שאורם מגיע ארצה רק כאשר הם עוצמם עבדו בעינם. There are stars up above, so far away, we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is the people that we love. Their memories keep shining, ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. Birth is a beginning, and death, a destination. And life is a journey, from childhood to maturity, and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From loneliness to love, joy to gratitude. From pain to compassion, grief to understanding. From defeat to defeat to defeat. Until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death, a destination. But life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage, shared beyond the memory that endures for us all. In the book of Proverbs, Eshet Chayil Yigzah. A good woman, a woman of valor, who can find? Her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She renders him good, never evil, all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy, extends it to the poor. She is robed in strength and in dignity. Cheerfully she faces whatever may come. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She tends to the affairs of her household, eats not the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband, too, and praises her. Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman of integrity, much to be praised. Place before her the fruit of her hands. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. Why don't we do one of the musical pieces? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know you and Adam are just the two of you. Yep.
But you have to go to the CABI-Boise.
Okay.
Have a look for that.
I sent the link. I don't know why.
But you see, there's 30 people watching right now.
Just check it.
So maybe they do something.
So we will hear from a number of Vivian's loved ones sharing stories, recollections, memories from her life, some in person. And first I'm going to read a couple on behalf of those who are unable to be here in person, starting with Bonnie, who's had Joel's. How do you say goodbye to someone who has impacted your life in immeasurable ways? I decided that I am just not going to do that. My dear, precious Vivian came into my life in 1966 when I was 15 years old. It was love at first sight for Vivian and me, and I wanted to make sure that Joel got this right, because I had found my big sister. For me, she was a role model for grace, beauty, style, and feminine strength. Everything about her was so beautiful. She was just so sweet and kind to this teen who lacked confidence, any sense of self. She could dance, too. We grew close, we stayed that way, sharing triumphs, joys, sadness, losses, gains, tender moments. Just so much fun and laughter through the years. For those who grew up with Vivian, she was Bibi. But she once shared with me that if that nickname wasn't comfortable for someone to use because they didn't grow up with her, then she preferred to be called Vivian. And that's what I did. She was always Vivienne, with an accent on the last syllable, V. Over the years, she and Joel added Randy Shane and Adam to this earth. Two very, very fine additions. She loved to tell the story of the time I went to their house so she could rest and I would take care of Adam, my tiny nephew who I love so dearly, still do. But being such a klutz, I dropped an unbreakable Corelle dish that broke into thousands of tiny pieces. And that was the end to her peace and quiet. We laughed over that story many more times than I can remember. But she always added that I was just trying to be so helpful. Vivian was a loving aunt to our 5 children. Ryan and Aaron always looked forward to their visits with Aunt Viv. And she and Joel spoke so warmly about how Aaron and Brad hosted them when their flight left them stranded at the Denver airport. So grateful they got to spend that special time together. Vivian always called Michael her sunshine. Michael writes, well, the biggest thing I think for me is the way she would greet me every time I saw her. She would be so excited for my hug and have such a big smile for me. And we'd really squeeze each other. And she would call me sunshine. Just the best special greeting ritual, just for us. And I would be so excited for it. It made me feel so loved. She was Matt's tickle monster. She just loved Frankie's hugs. She never failed to ask Rebecca, Kendra, and Charlene how they were doing, what was going on with their jobs, and of course, how are all of our grandkids. Rebecca writes, Aunt Viv sent me a birthday card for many years, and it was always a nice card. She took me as one of her own. She made me feel included in her family rituals. This might seem trivial, but it really wasn't. It was one of the ways I knew she was my Aunt Viv, too. When you were in Vivian's company, you always felt like you mattered to her. She always remembered what was most important to each of us. That is one of the many things that made her so special. She asked questions. She listened to your responses. She cared what you had to say, always. When David came into my life, she welcomed him with open arms. They were always good buddies. She was always concerned about him, and it was just so genuine. They shared stories. They laughed. They just sat quietly together, comfortable in each other's company. Our times with Joel and Vivian have always been so precious. Joel and Vivian's love is one for the ages. It's difficult to find words to describe their dedication to each other, their adorable and loving rituals, their mutual love for good music, an evening cocktail, an intense conversation, a warm snuggle, and 3 kisses. It's been such a blessing in my life that both of my big brothers found their forever partners. Being witness to the lives they built for themselves and for their children, such a precious part of my life. So I won't say goodbye, Vivian. I will hold all the memories close to my heart. I can feel the touch of her hand, which often reached for mine. I can hear her voice. I can see her on the dance floor in my brother's arms or at our wedding doing a kick line to New York, New York. I hear her sneezes, cute sneezes, and her laughter that was so infectious. I will love my sister forever. And from Sandy. Phoebe was my baby sister. Growing up, we were inseparable. She came with me everywhere. Even though my friends would never have their sisters join us, Phoebe was always accepted. After we were both married and we were raising our children, we would get together for lunch every week. One of my most precious memories is all the fantastic Thanksgivings we shared. Phoebe, I love you, and I will always be forever grateful for every moment we shared together. So I'm going to invite Adam and Randy. You guys can decide who wants to go first. Come on up.
Of course. Absolutely.
I'll let y'all know my sister just said age before beauty. So that's how I'm up here. Thank you, people whose words came before mine. So appreciative of listening to all of that. It means a lot. So many of the memories of my mom that have risen to the surface of my mind are about how sensitive and gentle she was and how much she believed everyone should have opportunities to feel important and special, which we've just heard all about. So we all know it. I vividly remember how it felt to ride in the car with my mom, which was how I spent probably thousands of hours of my childhood. And therefore, it's how she spent thousands of hours of her life, too. And I remember her commenting about how special that was to her. And I know about that now from the driver's seat, how that time with my son is this precious time. And I remember my mom telling me, I just read that part. It was our time to talk and get caught up. This might help. And on longer rides, like when she drove me to saxophone lessons, if it was raining, I was fascinated by drops of rain slowly inching their way down the window, just looking out that window, and I could watch that for a long time. But I have a vivid memory of course, we spent a lot of time talking. That's a lot of what was so special about it. But I remember, I have a vivid memory of how it felt also listening to my mom singing very gently and softly, along with all the songs on the adult contemporary station. 3 Times a Lady by the Commodores, Close to You, Carpenters, If by Bread. Those are the songs of my youth. She loved those gentle, soothing songs, and that was one of my mom's main vibes. Not all the time, mind you, it wasn't her only vibe, but it was one of the main ones. She was a strong believer in things like decorum, decency, consideration, respectfulness. She also sometimes seemed to take pleasure in breaking the rules or in watching someone else break them. And she could see great humor in things going wrong. She loved slapstick comedy, just somebody falling down. Hysterical to her. I have wonderful memories of her laughing uncontrollably at utterly silly, nonsensical things. I remember having seen the movie Stripes, the first R-rated movie I'd seen, which she had reluctantly allowed me to see with my friend and his stepdad when we were about 11 years old. And after having seen the movie, I took a lot of pleasure in repeating my favorite line. So forgive me for language here. In the movie, it was said by someone with a foreign accent, and I think Bill Murray's character was commonly teaching English immigrants in the movie, that one of the immigrants was demonstrating his new English vocabulary, and it went like this: son of a beach, shit. So I remember that I could say that to my mom over and over again. Every time she just laughed hysterically. Shortly after my parents moved to Boise, it became apparent something was wrong with Mom. We thought maybe she was depressed. I became worried that part of why she was depressed was that she was disappointed with how it was turning out for her to be close to my family, my wife and my kids and me, and living near us was not making her as happy as she might have hoped. So I was having lunch with her and Dad at the Ram on Broadway, and somehow the conversation came to a point where it felt appropriate for me to say something. I told her I was worried we were letting her down in some way. And her eyes filled with tears, and she said, "No, that's not it at all. It is very special with me." She said, "I'm glad to have the chance to tell you that." She didn't want me to think what I was thinking. It was probably the last time I saw anything like that kind of emotion from her. I think after that, her condition increasingly led her to show a very narrow range of emotion. So it was a very special moment. And it is bittersweet now to know that the symptoms that seemed like depression were at least partly due to her condition. In high school, I was in a band. We used to play dances and stuff like that, and my parents were able to see us play a few times. My big feature number on the keyboard and singing was Elton John's Rocket Man. I was pretty proud of how I did that song at the time, and I've wondered if there were any other high school bands in the late 1980s playing Rocket Man. Periodically over the rest of my mom's life, she would tell me that she thought of me every time she heard that song on the radio. Maybe I didn't always appreciate her saying that. I mean, come on, Mom, that was high school. Hopefully not my greatest life achievement. But I certainly appreciate it now. So thank you, Mom. You really did so much good. I love you and I miss you. Your 3 grandsons and your daughter-in-law feel the same. You brought so much love and wonderful memories into our lives.
Be glad and thank you.
My mommy's nickname for me was Moxie.
I was apparently a bit of a mess of a girl when I was little, at least in the sense that it was hard to sort of put me together, dress-wise. It was a special kind of affection that she reserved for special people, the one I didn't always appreciate. Her impulse to give certain people a hard time. But so, Moxie, hopefully I put it together okay for you today, Mommy. My mommy would always see the other side in my conflicts with other people, which drove me crazy. It felt to me like she wasn't on my side, until I realized that she would do the same for me if I wasn't the one in the room. She always understood and defended the person who wasn't there to defend himself. Except once, when it mattered the most. Thanks for that one. I didn't write this down, but I want to tell the story. There were signs and worries, symptoms in the year that I spent living with my dad and my mom in Cleveland after my separation. And she was driving me crazy on a few different levels. I didn't catch it. I misunderstood. And one day, when she was deteriorating pretty badly, but she was still sitting on the couch watching TV, looking very pretty. And I just worked out, and someone went to the shower, and I saw my chance. So I decided to go up to her. I knelt in front of her and I said, Mommy, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but I'm going to make sure that you're really sorry. There were some reasons I had to be upset with you at the time, but there were some things I really misunderstood. I just really wanted to let you know before I get in the shower. I'm really sorry about that. And she patted me on the head, and she said, shower. That's my version of your story. One last thing about Mommy. The story is that Mom couldn't sing. Surrounded by singers and musicians, most of the time she couldn't match their key. So why are some of my sweetest memories of my mother, of her singing to me? In the mornings, I remember being woken by a gentle circle of her hand on my back and her breathy, honey voice singing, it's time to get up, it's time to get up, it's time to get up. I mean, come on. That's 11 o'clock. Or her favorite songs to sing to me. Sugar pie, honey bunch, you know that I love you. Can't help myself. Or baby love, my baby love. I love you, oh how I love you. Riding in the car, when we were kids and didn't know the songs to sing along, she would lose her self-consciousness and sing along softly with the stop part station. On key or not. Usually on key. Or at the end of the night when we used to say to each other in a sing-songy voice, have a good sleepy, and I'll see you in the cutie pie morning. What the hell does that even mean? The story was that Mommy couldn't sing. But that was wrong. Mommy sang great. I miss her singing great.
How do I follow those? I want to thank everybody for being here. To share our tribute. Especially want to thank our dear friends and family from across the country for being here as well. Actually, I think more than there are here, but I really appreciate all of you being here. It feels really good. I don't want to close this eulogy on a down note, so I feel the need to first read the obituary I wrote for Vivian, which appeared in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, because that was our home for nearly 20 years before moving here. It glows about who she was, and my words are insufficient. But it also talks about what took her life away. And while we're here today to celebrate her life, we also address our loss in hers. The obituary read, Vivian Wild Brockman passed away on Monday, September 26th, of progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, a rare neurological disease that robbed her of her ability to speak or walk, and not of her awareness or her everlasting sweetness. Vivian was born in Paterson, New Jersey on February 21st, 1945 to mother Sarah and father Harry Wild. She graduated from Bayonne, New Jersey High School. That's her name. And she attended the New School in New York City, worked as a legal secretary and administrative assistant for most of her life, taking time away from her career during the elementary and middle school years of her children. Her income was devoted to their undergraduate college tuition. And she covered it all. All their educational debt was incurred by them for their master's degrees and doctorate that she paid for the undergraduate. Vivian was known for her warm, bright smile, her sense of humor and fashion, and for being a good, giving, and warm friend. She was perceptive and intuitive, graceful and beautiful, and had a great love for her family. She's survived by her husband of 54 years, son Adam Brockman, a psychologist with the Veterans Administration Hospital in Boise, Idaho, daughter Randy Shane, a licensed marriage and family therapist in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, 3 grandsons, Jacob Brockman, a freshman at the University of Idaho, Benjamin Brockman, a junior at Bishop Kelly High School, and Simon, a freshman at Bishop Kelly. Daughter-in-law Angie Brockman and his sister Sandy Adler of Buffalo Grove, Illinois. In her memory, donations can be sent to Cure PSP or Miracle for Mom, which targets research for rare brain diseases. Now for the obituary. My Viv. That's who she was, still is, and will always be. We met as employees of Greenbaum, and Rowe, a small firm of real estate attorneys in beautiful downtown Newark, New Jersey. She was a valuable and capable secretary and assistant to Mr. Rowe, and I was a green third-year student at Rutgers Law School trying to be at least somewhat useful part-time law clerk. We had very little interaction for a while, probably because both of us were pretty shy. But one magic day, I was clearly frazzled, struggling to figure out how to use the 1966 version of a high-tech copy machine. When she came over with a warmly empathetic look on her beautiful face and said, "Can I help you?" I eagerly accepted the offer. In which she saw my look of relief and gratitude, she gave me that smile. At that moment, my life changed and everything seemed brighter. A few days later, I asked if I could join her and her friend, the switchboard operator. Switchboard. I'll explain to the boys what that was later. For lunch at the deli down the street from the office, she smiled and she said, "Sure, we're going at 12. I got there a few minutes after they had sat across from one another at a table for four. I chose to sit next to her friend, partly because I didn't want to be too obvious, but mostly because that way I could see that face and that smile more easily. She eventually told me, once it became clear that we were a thing, that she thought that I had meant that I was interested in her friend. Fact is, I can't even remember her name. Anyway, the rest is history. Our first date, which we kept secret from our bosses at the law firm, which was, of course, dinner and music at a jazz club. And we couldn't stop looking into each other's eyes. Not long after that, I gave her my college fraternity pin, which was the customary next step. And I broke the news to my parents that I was going to ask her to marry me. I won't go into how they received the news, but I will say that my father was good enough to help me with the cost of a pretty dazzling diamond ring. I accepted the help because I felt strongly that they deserved nothing less. When we broke the news to the Greenbaum brothers and Roe, they were delighted, but they said, of course, Vivian would have to leave the firm. That's what I call sacrifice on their part in order to stick with their antiquated policy. In the meantime, I had graduated from law school, passed the bar, and was asked to join the firm as an associate. And then I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer after all. I left the firm. I went to work for a mortgage banking and real estate company, in which my father was a senior executive, and I enlisted in the New Jersey Army National Guard band in order to legitimately avoid the draft and to avoid ending up in Vietnam. We planned our wedding for what we thought would be soon after I completed my 6 months of basic training at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. It turned out, though, that the start of basic training was delayed by a couple of months. And I had to get a short leave approved so I could go home to Westfield, New Jersey, and get married before driving back to North Carolina to process out. While I was away at basic and on-the-job training, Viv and her mother, Sari, had to deal with my relatively well-to-do parents, taking over the role of wedding planners and hosts, consulting as little as possible with them. The wedding turned out to be what amounted, to a grand party for business associates with a smattering of family, a handful of our friends, and very few of Sari's relatives. And yet my Viv struggled through it and made it work. She rightfully let me know that she didn't appreciate how that was handled and was disappointed that I hadn't stepped up and put my foot down. She was right, and I told her so. She helped me to grow up, and she continued to do that throughout many of the earlier years of our partnership and our marriage. The proper time after our wedding we had to make do as a honeymoon. That's a whole other story. Along came Adam, and 3 years later, Randy, and now look at how proud they made us. And look at our terrific daughter-in-law, Angie, and our 3 gorgeous and talented grandsons, Jacob, Benjamin, and Simon. And who could have known that we'd end up in Idaho? But we did it together just like always. So I just want to, again, thank all of you for being here. And the 3 boys that I mentioned, and my son and daughter are our band today. And I also want to thank my good friends, Fred and Bruce from Switch and Time Band, for being our percussion section. We'll bring you a little bit more music a little bit later.
Invite us to rise as able for Elmole Rachamim, one of the 2 traditional Jewish mourners' prayers. Elmole Rachamim, שוכן בהמרומים, אמצנו הנכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. קדושים דורים כזוהר, הרקיע מסעירים את נשמת קבע בצרה שלך לאור רמה. על הרחמים, אסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום המשכבה, ונאמר אמן. Holy One, source of mercy, we ask that you grant perfect rest beneath the shadow of your wings the soul of Kaya Batsara, Vivian Brahman. May you hold her in peace, and may her memory be bound up the bond of all life. You are her inheritance. May she rest in peace. Let us say, Amen. Be seated. Why don't we do the other band number?
That's man on bass, Jacob on Mike Henry saxophone, and Simon on trumpet. You know the rest.
The words of what you just heard come from the book of Psalms, and they mean, behold how good, how beautiful it is when brothers and sisters come together to join in. I'm going to, in a moment, ask us to rise again for the second of the traditional Jewish prayers for morning, which is known as the Kaddish. Most of our Jewish prayers are in Hebrew. The Kaddish is actually in Aramaic, which was the spoken language at the time. They wanted everybody, even 2,000 years ago, not all the Jews knew Hebrew. Not much has changed. But everybody spoke Aramaic, so they put this prayer in Aramaic. Become really synonymous in many ways with mourning, but prayer makes no mention of mourning actually in its words. The words are words of praise, of affirmation, of life. And so with the words of Kaddish, we remember Vivian, we grieve her loss, and we also affirm and celebrate the gifts of her life. We'll have us rise for Kaddish, and afterwards we'll conclude with Randy and Adam. Yifkidal, Yifkidash, Shemei Rabbah. Yamad, Yivrat, Yirteh, Yamlit, Mafuteh, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayeh D'chol Beit Yisrael, Ha'galam, Zman Kari, V'yimru, Amen. V'hei Shemei Rabbah, V'barach, V'olam, Omei Omaya. V'barach, V'shtabach, V'pa'ar, V'tromam, V'naseh. V'hadar, V'tamet, V'talal, Shemei V'shan, V'richu. Ve'elam Yinko Birchata V'shirata V'shvachata V'nechmata V'amiran V'alma V'imru Amen. Yehei Shalom HaRabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'yochol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Osei Shalom V'romav V'yasei Shalom Aleinu V'yochol Yisrael V'imru Amen. In the source of peace on high, the peace descend on us, all Israel and all the world. May comfort be with all who mourn, and let us all say, Amen.
To lead a better life, I need my love to be here.
Making each day of the year, changing my life with the wave of her hand. Nobody can deny that there's something running her hands in my hair. Both of us thinking how good it can be. Someone is speaking, but she doesn't know he's there.
I want her everywhere, and if she's beside me, I know I need never care. But to love her is to meet her everywhere.
Knowing that love is to share, each one believing that love never dies, watching her eyes and hoping I'm always there.
I want her everywhere, and if she's beside me, I know I need never care.
all for coming, and there will be a lunch and some food across the way.
Thank you. See you over where the food is.
A lot of talented musicians in your family. You raised them right. Thank you. Like family band.
There's some comments. There are a lot of there's people commenting. Just daughter, my sister, Greg says beautiful service.
Yeah. Memorials for people in the region of time. Really? Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
I know, I knew the son. I didn't know that before I got here. You're still in town, Stan's around. Yeah, Stan's got he's got a practice.
Some people are commenting and just saying, I saw Greg's name on there a couple of times, and Jill and Michelle.
Yeah, I guess you have to do it this
I
way.
was thinking maybe you want to say something. I don't know, like I was thinking thank you for your family.
Yeah.
I'm going to sign it.
Yeah, I would think so. All of us will. Yeah, Randy and just yeah, just put all of us.
Yeah.
It's probably the one chance that anybody might see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got it.
We're just
I'm just writing a comment.
if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Just in response to everybody.
Okay, so can I just now get up?
Yeah, I'll look at it later. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
It'll be up with the comments and everything, right, for a while?
Yes, it'll stay there until new media. The comments will stay there all the time.
Okay, great. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
This guy also.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
No problem.